You are listening to HOA Anger. This is the pettiest parking war ever. I am standing in my driveway in Buffalo, New York, staring at a bright tow warning sticker slapped on my driver's side window, and I know for a fact I have been home for the past 4 hours. The sticker is neon orange, impossible to miss, and it says my vehicle is in violation and subject to immediate tow. I peel it off and read the fine print. Fire lane violation. I look at my driveway. I am parked in my own driveway, 6 feet from the curb, nowhere near a fire lane. I look up and see her. Amy Campbell, Fines and Enforcement Coordinator for the Clearbrook Terrace Association. She is standing across the street with a clipboard, watching me through oversized sunglasses, and she is smiling. I moved to Buffalo 3 years ago for work. I am a home warranty claims rep. I read fine print for a living. I know when something does not add up. Clearbrook Terrace is one of those places where the board calls everything a towable offense. Guest parking requires a permit. Resident parking requires a decal. Street parking is banned after 10 at night. The rules change every 6 months, and they never send updated copies unless you ask. Most people do not ask. Most people just pay the fines and move on. I am not most people. Amy walks over. She is wearing a white blazer over a pink tank top, and she has thrown on a reflective safety vest to look official. Her short bob is perfectly styled, and her red baseball cap has the HOA logo embroidered on the front. She stops at the end of my driveway and taps her pen against the clipboard. She says, "You were cited for fire lane parking. You have 24 hours to pay the fine, or your vehicle will be towed." I hold up the sticker. I say, "I am in my driveway." She shrugs. She says, "Your rear bumper was over the curb cut. That is a fire lane." I turn around and look. My car is a full car length up the driveway. The rear bumper is not even close to the curb. I say, "No, it was not." She says, "I took a photo. The photo shows a violation. You can appeal at the next board meeting if you want, but the fine stands until then. $150. I say, "When did you take this photo?" She says, "An hour ago." I say, "I have been home all afternoon. I did not move my car." She says, "Then you will not have a problem paying the fee. And if you do not pay, you will pay the tow fee. And then you will pay the impound fee. And then you will pay the administrative fee for the dispute process. You will pay the fee, then you will pay the fee about the fee." I feel my chest tighten. I am in the middle of a big contract at work. A complicated claim for a foundation repair that could go either way depending on how I document it. I am on call. I cannot have my vehicle immobilized or towed. I cannot afford the distraction. I take a breath and I say, "Show me the photo." She flips the clipboard around. The photo is taken at a weird angle, shot from low and to the side, making my car look like it is sitting half on the curb. The perspective is distorted. It is not accurate. I say, "This is staged." She says, "This is evidence. Pay the fine or the tow company will be here tomorrow morning." I say, "What tow company?" She says, "Our vendor. They work exclusively with the association. They are very efficient." I say, "Do they get a cut of the fine?" Her smile does not change. She says, "I am calling management, and I am going to be dramatic about it. You are being hostile and uncooperative. I am documenting this interaction." She turns and walks back across the street. I stand there with the sticker in my hand and I think about what she just said. You will pay the fee, then you will pay the fee about the fee. I let her say my name loud, because later I wanted it on the recording. I go inside and I pull up the HOA documents. I have every email, every rule change notice, every fine schedule they have ever sent. I look at the fire lane policy. Fire lanes are marked with red curb paint and signage. I walk back outside and I check the curb. No red paint. No sign. I take photos of my car, the curb, the driveway, and the street from every angle. I timestamp everything. Then I look up the tow vendor. The company is called Rapid Recovery Services. I search for complaints. There are dozens. Predatory towing, illegal boots, refusal to release vehicles, inflated fees. Most of the complaints are from other HOA neighborhoods. I screenshot everything. That night, I get an email from the management company. It is a formal notice. The fine has been escalated to $250 due to my failure to comply within the initial response window. I look at the timestamp on the email. It was sent 6 hours after Amy handed me the sticker. The 24-hour window has not even started. I reply and I attach my photos. I write, I was cited for a fire lane violation while parked in my own driveway. There is no red curb, no signage, and the photo provided by the enforcement coordinator is misleading. I am disputing this fine, and I request a formal hearing. The next morning I wake up, and there is a tow truck in front of my house. The driver is standing on the sidewalk with a handheld scanner, checking my license plate. I walk outside in my work shirt and gray baseball cap. I say, "Can I help you?" He looks up. He says, "This vehicle is flagged for tow. Association order." I say, "I am disputing the citation. I filed an appeal last night." He shrugs. He says, "I just get the work orders. You will have to talk to them." I say, "Who authorized this?" He says, "The enforcement coordinator, Amy Campbell." I pull out my phone and I call the management company. The line rings 4 times and then I get voicemail. I leave a message. I say, "This is about the Clearbrook Terrace tow order on my vehicle. I filed a dispute last night and I am requesting an immediate stay on any tow action until the hearing." I hang up and I look at the driver. I say, "I am not letting you tow this car until I get confirmation that the dispute process has been followed." He scratches his head. He says, "Look, man, I do not want trouble. But if I do not hook it, I do not get paid, and she will just call another company." I say, "How much does she pay you per tow?" He does not answer. He walks back to the truck and he pulls out a wheel lift arm. I step between him and my car. I say, "I need to see the authorization paperwork." He stops. He says, "I do not carry that. The office handles it." I say, "Then call your office and get a copy sent to my email right now, or I am filing a complaint with the State Towing Commission." He looks at me for a long moment. Then he gets on his radio. I hear him talking to someone. A few minutes later, my phone buzzes. It is an email with a scan of the work order. The order is dated yesterday, before I even received the first notice. I screenshot it. I say, "This work order was issued before the dispute window even opened. That is not legal." The driver raises his hands. He says, "I am just doing my job." I say, "I am not stopping you from doing your job. I am stopping you from doing an illegal tow. If you proceed, I will file a police report for vehicle theft, and I will name you and your company." He backs off. He says, "Fine. I will tell them you refused, but they are going to send someone else." He gets in the truck and he drives away. I stand there and I feel my phone buzz again. It is another email from the management company. They are CCing Amy. The email says my vehicle has been flagged for immediate boot and tow due to non-compliance with enforcement procedures. They are adding a $200 administrative fee for obstruction. I reply. I say, I have documented everything. The work order was issued prematurely. The photo evidence is misleading. I have proof that I was parked legally. If you proceed with any further action, I will escalate this to an attorney, and I will file a formal complaint against the association and the tow vendor. 2 hours later, I get a response. It is from Amy. She says, "Your obstruction has been noted. Effective immediately, you are banned from using the community amenities, including the pool, the fitness center, and the guest parking lot, until all outstanding fines and fees are resolved. Additionally, your guest parking privileges have been revoked. Any guests parking on association property will be towed without notice." I read it twice. I am not even using the amenities. I have never used the guest lot. But the ban is a signal. She is escalating. She is trying to pressure me into paying. I forward the email to a friend of mine, a former board member named Tom, who left the board 2 years ago after he got tired of fighting with Amy. I ask him if this is legal. He calls me 10 minutes later. He says, "She cannot ban you from amenities over a disputed fine. That is retaliation. But she does it all the time. She knows most people will not fight it." I say, "What do I do?" He says, "You need to get records. Everything. Tow contracts, vendor agreements, fine schedules, meeting minutes. If she is running a kickback scheme with the tow company, it will be in the financials. But you will have to file a formal records request, and they have to respond within 30 days. I say, "I do not have 30 days. She is going to tow me tonight." He says, "Then you need to escalate faster. File a complaint with the management company. Demand a meeting with the board. If they stall, threaten legal action." Amy hates that. I hang up and I draft a records request. I ask for copies of the tow vendor contract, the enforcement policy manual, the fine schedule, and all meeting minutes from the past year. I send it to the management company, and I CC the entire board. Then I sit down and I look at my contract paperwork for work. The foundation claim is due in 3 days. I cannot let this spiral. I need to shut it down fast. That afternoon, the gate at the front of the neighborhood glitches. It is an old mechanical arm gate that is supposed to lift when you scan your resident decal. I pull up and I scan. Nothing happens. I scan again. The arm stays down. I back up and I try a third time. Still nothing. I am blocking the entrance. Cars are lining up behind me. I get out and I walk to the call box. I press the button for the management office. No answer. I press it again. A voice crackles through. It is Amy. She says, "Can I help you?" I say, "The gate is not reading my decal." She says, "Your decal was deactivated due to your suspension from association privileges." I say, "I need to get to my house." She says, "You can park on the street outside the gate and walk in. Association property is restricted until your account is current." I feel my jaw tighten. I say, "You cannot lock me out of my own neighborhood." She says, "I just did. Have a nice day." The line goes dead. The cars behind me start honking. I get back in my car and I back up and I pull onto the side street. I park outside the gate and I walk in. It is a 15-minute walk to my house in the heat. By the time I get home, I am sweating and furious. I sit down and I call Tom again. I say, "She locked me out." He says, "She is using the gate malfunction to claim you are trespassing. That is her move. She did it to another guy last year. He ended up selling his house and moving." I say, "I am not moving." He says, "Then you need to go nuclear." File a complaint with the state. File a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. File a complaint with the management company's corporate office. Flood them with paper. Make it more expensive for them to fight you than to fold. I hang up and I start writing. I file a complaint with the state HOA ombudsman. I file a complaint with the BBB. I write a detailed email to the corporate office of the management company, and I attach every photo, every email, every document I have. I explain the staged photo, the premature work order, the retaliation, the gate lockout. I say this is harassment and it is illegal. I am requesting an immediate investigation, and I am prepared to retain counsel if necessary. I hit send and I wait. An hour later, I get a response. It is from a regional manager named Susan. She says, "We take these allegations seriously. We are opening an internal review. In the meantime, we are instructing the gate vendor to restore your access immediately. Please allow 24 hours for the system to update." I feel a small sense of relief. But I know Amy is not done. That night, I am sitting at my desk working on the foundation claim when I hear a noise outside. I look out the window and I see a tow truck backing into my driveway. I run outside. The driver is the same guy from this morning. He has already positioned the wheel lift under my rear axle. I say, "Stop." He looks at me. He says, "I got another work order. Immediate tow. No exceptions." I say, "From who?" He says, "Same person. Amy Campbell." I pull out my phone and I call the management company. It goes to voicemail. I call Susan's direct line. Voicemail. I look at the driver. I say, "I am calling the police." He says, "Go ahead. I will be gone before they get here." I dial 911. The dispatcher answers. I say, "Someone is trying to tow my vehicle from my private driveway without authorization. I have documentation that this is retaliation from my HOA." The dispatcher says, "Is your vehicle legally parked?" I say yes. I am in my own driveway. I have photos. She says, "We will send an officer. Stay on the line." The driver hears this, and he hesitates. He looks at his phone. Then he unhooks the wheel lift, and he backs out of the driveway. He says, "They are going to keep trying. You know that, right?" I say, "Let them." He drives away. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulls up. The officer gets out, and I explain the situation. I show him the emails, the photos, the work orders. He takes notes. He says, "This sounds like a civil dispute. If they try to tow you again without proper notice, call us and we will document it. But you are probably going to need a lawyer." I say, "I know." He leaves. I go back inside and I look at the foundation claim. I have not touched it in 2 days. I am running out of time. I open my laptop and I start drafting the report. My phone buzzes. It is another email from Amy. She says, "Your continued obstruction has resulted in additional administrative penalties. You now owe $575 in fines and fees. Payment is due within 48 hours or a lien will be filed against your property." I close my eyes. I take a breath. Then I open a new browser tab, and I start searching for HOA attorneys in Buffalo. I find one with good reviews. I call and I leave a message. I say, "I need help with an HOA enforcement dispute. It is urgent. Please call me back." The next morning the attorney calls. His name is Richard. He listens to my story and he asks for copies of everything. I send him the emails, the photos, the work orders, the complaint history for the tow vendor, and the records request I filed. He calls me back an hour later. He says, "This is textbook retaliation. The staged photo, the premature work order, the gate lockout, the amenity ban. It is all retaliatory. And if she is getting kickbacks from the tow company, that is a breach of fiduciary duty. But we need proof." I say, "How do I get proof?" He says, "The records request is a start. If they do not respond, we can file a motion to compel. But that takes time. The faster route is to find someone on the inside who will talk." I think about Tom. I call him and I explain what the attorney said. He says, "I might have something." When I was on the board, I saw an invoice from the tow company that did not make sense. It was coded as a vendor payment, but the amount was way higher than what we were actually collecting in tow fees. I asked about it, and Amy shut me down. She said it was a retainer. I let it go because I was already on my way out. But I kept a copy. If you are enjoying this wild story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA drama. I say, "Can you send it to me?" He says, "I will do better. I will send it to your attorney. Give me his email." I give him Richard's contact. An hour later, Richard calls me back. He says, "This is it." The invoice shows the HOA is paying the tow company a monthly retainer of $2,000, but the tow logs only show about 6 tows per month at $150 each. That is $900. Where is the other $1,100 going? I say, "Kickbacks." He says, "Probably. Or inflated fees. Either way, it is grounds for a forensic audit." I am going to draft a demand letter. We are going to threaten to file a lawsuit unless they provide full financial disclosure and reverse all penalties against you. We are also going to demand that Amy recuse herself from any further enforcement actions involving your property. I say, "How long will that take?" He says, "I will send it today. They have 10 days to respond." I hang up and I feel a small surge of hope. But I also know 10 days is a long time. I need to keep the pressure on. I go back to the records request and I check the deadline. They have 26 days left to respond. I forward the request to the state ombudsman and I ask them to expedite the review. Then I sit down and I finish the foundation claim. I submit it with 2 hours to spare. That night, I am sitting on my couch when I hear voices outside. I look out the window and I see Amy standing in the street with a man in a suit. They are looking at my house and pointing. I grab my phone and I start recording. I walk outside. Amy sees me and she turns. The man in the suit is holding a clipboard. He looks official. Amy says, "This is the property. You can see the violation clearly." I say, "What violation?" The man looks at me. He says, "I am with the City Code Enforcement Office. I received a complaint that this property is in violation of local ordinances." I say, "What ordinance?" He says, "Overgrown landscaping and improper storage of vehicles." I look at my yard. The grass is mowed. There are no vehicles except my car in the driveway. I say, "There is no violation here." He walks closer and he looks around. He checks his clipboard. He says, "The complaint says there is a non-running vehicle stored on the property." I say, "My car runs fine. I drove it this morning." He makes a note. He says, "The complaint also mentions overgrown shrubs blocking the sidewalk." I look at the shrubs. They are trimmed back. I say, "There is nothing blocking the sidewalk." He walks the perimeter of my property. He takes photos. Then he comes back and he says, "I do not see any violations. The complaint appears to be unfounded. I will close it out." Amy steps forward. She says, "That is not acceptable." I filed that complaint in good faith. The inspector looks at her. He says, "Ma'am, filing a false report is a misdemeanor. If you have an issue with your neighbor, I suggest you work it out privately." He gets in his truck and he drives away. I look at Amy. I say, "You called code enforcement on me?" She says, "I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it. You are creating a hostile environment in this neighborhood." I hold up my phone. I say, "I recorded that entire conversation. You just filed a false complaint with the city. That is on record now." Her face goes pale. She turns and she walks away. I go back inside and I send the video to Richard. He calls me 5 minutes later. He says, "This is escalating. She is panicking." That is good for us. It means she knows she is in trouble. Keep documenting everything. The next day, I get the gate access restored. I scan my decal and the arm lifts. I drive through and I park in my driveway. An hour later, I get an email from the management company. It is from Susan. She says, "We have completed our preliminary review. We are requesting a meeting with you, Amy Campbell, and the board president to discuss your concerns." The meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday at the management company office. I forward the email to Richard. He says, "This is good. They are trying to mediate. But do not go in there without me. I will attend as your representative." I reply to Susan and I confirm the meeting. I say, "I will be bringing legal counsel." Tuesday comes. I drive to the management company office with Richard. It is a small building in a strip mall. We walk in and we are shown to a conference room. Amy is already there with the board president, a man named Ed, and Susan. Amy is wearing her white blazer and her red baseball cap. She has the reflective safety vest draped over the back of her chair. She does not look at me. Susan starts the meeting. She says, "We are here to discuss the ongoing dispute regarding parking enforcement and tow procedures. We want to find a resolution that works for everyone." Richard opens his briefcase. He says, "My client has been subjected to harassment, retaliation, and financial extortion. We have documented evidence of staged violations, premature tow orders, gate lockouts, false code enforcement complaints, and financial irregularities involving the HOA's tow vendor." He slides a folder across the table. Susan opens it. Inside are copies of everything: the staged photo, the premature work order, the tow vendor complaints, the invoice from Tom, the video of the code enforcement visit. Susan's face tightens as she reads. Ed, the board president, says, "This is the first I am hearing about any of this." Richard says, "That is because Miss Campbell has been operating outside the scope of her authority. According to the association bylaws, enforcement actions must be approved by the board. Miss Campbell has been issuing fines, ordering tows, and banning residents without board approval. That is a violation of the governing documents." Amy speaks up. She says, "I have the authority to enforce the rules. That is my job." Richard says, "You have the authority to document violations. You do not have the authority to issue penalties without due process. And you certainly do not have the authority to order tows without board approval." Susan looks at Ed. She says, "Is this true?" Ed hesitates. He says, "I would need to check the bylaws." Richard pulls out another document. He says, "I already checked. Here is the relevant section. All fines and penalties must be approved by a majority vote of the board following a hearing. Miss Campbell has been skipping the hearing process entirely." Amy says, "That is not true. I send notices." Richard says, "A notice is not a hearing. A hearing requires an opportunity for the homeowner to present evidence and challenge the allegations. You have denied my client that opportunity. Susan looks at Amy. She says, "Did you approve these tow orders without board authorization?" Amy says, "The board gave me discretion to handle parking enforcement." Ed says, "I do not remember voting on that." Richard says, "That is because it never happened. And if you look at the invoice from the tow vendor, you will see that the HOA is paying a retainer that far exceeds the revenue from actual tows. That money is going somewhere. We are requesting a full forensic audit of the association's finances, and we are prepared to file a lawsuit if that request is denied." The room goes silent. Susan closes the folder. She says, "We will need time to review this. In the meantime, all enforcement actions against your client are suspended pending further investigation. Miss Campbell, you are not to have any further contact with this homeowner." Amy's face goes red. She says, "This is ridiculous. He is the one who has been obstructing enforcement." Richard says, "If you continue to contact my client or take any further action against him, we will file for a restraining order." Susan stands. She says, "This meeting is over. We will be in touch." We leave. Richard and I walk to the parking lot. He says, "That went well." They are scared. They know they are exposed. Now we wait for them to fold. I say, "How long?" He says, "A few days, maybe a week." They do not want this to go to court. I drive home, and I feel a sense of relief. But I also know it is not over. Amy is not the type to back down quietly. That night I get an email. It is from Amy, sent from her personal account. She says, "You think you won. You did not. I have friends on the board. I have friends at the management company. You are going to regret this." I forward it to Richard. He says, "That is harassment. Save it. If she contacts you again, we file for the restraining order." 2 days later, I get a call from Susan. She says, "We have completed our review. The board has voted to reverse all fines and penalties against your property. Your account is clear. Additionally, Miss Campbell has been placed on administrative leave pending a full audit of the enforcement program. We apologize for the inconvenience." I say, "What about the tow vendor?" She says, "The contract with Rapid Recovery Services has been suspended. We are reviewing all vendor relationships." I hang up and I call Richard. I tell him what Susan said. He says, "That is a win. But we are not done. I want to see that audit. If there are kickbacks, we are going after her personally." A week later, Tom calls me. He says, "You are not going to believe this. The board just held an emergency meeting. They voted to remove Amy from the enforcement position. She is still on the board, but she has no authority over fines or towing anymore. And they hired an outside firm to audit the financials." I say, "What did they find?" He says, "I do not have details yet, but word is the tow vendor was paying Amy a referral fee for every tow she authorized. It was not in the HOA budget. It was a side deal. If that is true, she is toast." 2 weeks later, the audit report comes out. Richard gets a copy and he sends it to me. The report confirms it. Amy was receiving a payment of $50 per tow from Rapid Recovery Services. Over the past 2 years, she authorized over 300 tows. That is $15,000 in kickbacks. The report also finds that many of the tows were improper. Vehicles were towed without proper notice, without board approval, and in some cases without any violation at all. The report recommends that the HOA terminate its relationship with Rapid Recovery Services, refund all improper fines, and pursue legal action against Amy for breach of fiduciary duty. The board votes to accept the recommendations. They send a letter to every homeowner in the neighborhood explaining what happened and apologizing. They also send a correction email retracting the smear against me and confirming that I did not violate any rules. My account is cleared. My access is restored. My record is clean. But the best part comes a week later. I get a call from Tom. He says, "You have to see this." Amy tried to fight back. She filed a complaint with the board claiming you harassed her and that the audit was biased. She submitted photos as evidence. I say, "What photos?" He says, "Photos of your car. The same stage photos she used to cite you in the first place." But here is the thing. The board looked at the metadata. The photos were taken after she received the suspension notice. She was trying to build a case against you even after she was told to stop. The board saw it as more evidence of misconduct. They voted to remove her from the board entirely. She is out. I laugh. I say she used her own staged photos against herself. Tom says, "Exactly. And it gets better. The management company is facing a class action lawsuit from other homeowners who were improperly towed. Your case opened the floodgates." Rapid Recovery Services lost their contract with 6 other HOAs in the area. They are going under. I sit back and I think about everything that happened. The staged photo, the gate lockout, the false code enforcement complaint, the harassment, all of it came back to bite her. I let her say my name loud, because later I wanted it on the recording. And when I finally deployed my trump card, a certified copy of the HOA records showing Karen is not in good standing with her own dues, along with the invoice trail Tom provided, I had my attorney send a demand letter with attachments that forced the HOA to respond. They could not ignore it. They could not spin it. The evidence was too clear. A month later, I am sitting in my driveway and I see a for sale sign go up across the street. It is Amy's house. Tom calls me and he says, "She is moving. She cannot show her face in the neighborhood anymore. Everyone knows what she did." I do not feel sorry for her. She tried to squeeze me for money. She tried to intimidate me. She used her position to run a scam. And when I fought back, she escalated. She filed false complaints. She harassed me. She tried to lock me out of my own neighborhood. All because she thought I would not fight back. All because she thought she had the power. But here's the thing about HOAs. They only have as much power as you give them. The rules are not magic. The fines are not automatic. The tow trucks are not unstoppable. You just have to know the system. You have to read the fine print. You have to document everything. And you have to be willing to fight. I am back at the management company office for a follow-up meeting. It is just me, Richard, and Susan. She hands me a check. It is a refund for the original fine plus all the escalated fees, plus interest, plus $500 for my legal expenses. She says, "We are also implementing new enforcement policies. All fines must be approved by the full board. All tow orders must include photographic evidence and board authorization. And we are requiring annual audits of all vendor contracts." I say, "What about the other homeowners who were impacted?" She says, "We are reaching out to everyone who was improperly towed in the past 2 years. We are issuing refunds and we are offering to cover their tow and impound fees. The board is also setting up a hardship fund for anyone who suffered financial harm because of these practices." Richard says, "And Amy?" Susan says, "She is no longer involved with the association in any capacity. The board is considering legal action to recover the kickback payments. That is between them and their attorney." We shake hands and we leave. I drive home and I park in my driveway. The bright tow warning sticker is gone. The boot clamp is gone. The tow truck is gone. The harassment is over. I walk inside and I sit down at my desk and I open my laptop. I have a new warranty claim to review. It is a big one. A roof replacement that is going to take weeks to process. But this time I am not distracted. This time I can focus. A few weeks later, the annual HOA meeting happens. I attend. Tom is there. So is Ed, the board president. There are about 50 homeowners in the room. Ed stands up and he gives a report. He talks about the audit. He talks about the new enforcement policies. He talks about the refunds and the vendor changes. Then he opens the floor for questions. A woman in the back raises her hand. She says, "What is being done to make sure this does not happen again?" Ed says, "We are implementing a checks and balances system. No single board member will have unilateral authority over enforcement. All actions will require a vote. And we are bringing in an outside management consultant to review our governance practices." Another man raises his hand. He says, "What about accountability? Is anyone being held responsible?" Ed says, "Amy Campbell has been removed from the board, and we are pursuing recovery of the improper payments. Beyond that, this is a legal matter, and I cannot comment further." The room erupts in murmurs. People are angry. They want more. They want consequences. But I know how these things work. The HOA is trying to limit their liability. They are trying to move on. And honestly, I am okay with that. Amy is gone. The system is changing. The tow vendor is out of business. That is enough. After the meeting, Tom walks over. He says, "You did it. You actually took her down." I say, "I just wanted my car back." He laughs. He says, "You did more than that. You exposed the whole operation. Half the board is talking about resigning because they are embarrassed they did not catch it sooner. The management company is scrambling to fix their reputation. And Rapid Recovery Services is facing lawsuits from 3 other HOAs. You started a chain reaction." I say, "Good." He says, "You should run for the board." I shake my head. I say, I am done with HOA politics. I just want to park in my driveway and not get harassed. He says, "Fair enough." I drive home and I think about everything that happened. It started with a sticker. A bright tow warning sticker slapped on my window while I was home. I knew it was staged. I knew it was wrong. And I could have just paid the fine and moved on. Most people do. But I read fine print for a living. I know when something does not add up. So I fought. I documented. I escalated. And I won. But here's what I learned. The fight is not really about the tow or the fine or the boot clamp. It is about power. It is about someone using the rules to squeeze you. It is about someone thinking they can get away with it because you will not fight back. And the only way to stop it is to call it out, to shine a light on it, to make it more expensive for them to continue than to stop. That is what I did. I made it expensive. I filed complaints. I hired an attorney. I demanded records. I threatened lawsuits. I forced them to respond. And when they realized I was not backing down, they folded. Because at the end of the day, HOAs are not untouchable. They are just organizations run by people. And people make mistakes. And when those mistakes are exposed, the whole house of cards falls apart. A month later, I am in my driveway washing my car. A neighbor walks by. He stops and he says, "You are the guy who took down Amy, right?" I say, "I am the guy who disputed a fine." He says, "Man, thank you. She towed my car last year and charged me $400. I did not know I could fight it. I just paid. I wish I had done what you did." I say, "You can still file a complaint. The HOA is issuing refunds." He says, Really? I say really. Talk to the management company. They are making it right. He thanks me and he walks away. I finish washing the car and I stand back and I look at it. No stickers, no boot clamps, no tow trucks, just a clean car and a clean driveway. It feels good. That night I get an email from Richard. He says, I wanted to let you know the board just approved a settlement with the class action plaintiffs. They are paying out $200,000 in refunds and damages. Your case was the catalyst. You should be proud. I reply and I thank him. I pay his invoice and I close my laptop. I am done. The contract is over. The fight is over. The drama is over. I can go back to being a normal person in a normal neighborhood with a normal HOA that follows normal rules. But I also know that if it happens again, if another Amy shows up, if another staged photo or premature tow order or gate lockout happens, I will be ready. I have the playbook now. I have the contacts. I have the attorney. And I have the proof that it works. 6 months later, I am at a neighborhood barbecue. Tom is grilling burgers. Ed is there with his wife. There are about 20 people scattered around the pool area. It is a warm summer evening and everyone is relaxed. The conversation drifts to HOA stuff. Someone mentions the new enforcement policies. Someone else mentions the audit. And then Ed raises his beer and he says, here is to second chances and clean slates. Everyone drinks. I look around and I realize something. This is what a functional HOA looks like. People who care about the neighborhood but do not abuse their power. Rules that make sense and are applied fairly. Enforcement that has checks and balances. It is not perfect. But it is better. A woman I do not recognize walks over. She says, you are the guy who fought the tow, right? I say, that is me. She says, I just moved in. I heard the whole story. It is kind of legendary around here. I laugh. I say, I just wanted to park in my driveway. She says, well, because of you, I feel a lot better about buying here. I know the HOA is not going to run wild. I say, that is good to hear. She walks away and Tom comes over with a plate of burgers. He says, you are a local hero now. You know that, right? I say, I am just a guy who read the bylaws. He says, most people do not bother. That is why people like Amy get away with it. But you bothered, and now the whole neighborhood is better for it. I take a burger and I sit down by the pool. I think about the staged photo, the boot clamp, the tow truck in my driveway, the gate lockout, the false code enforcement complaint, the harassment, the emails, the meetings, the legal fees, the stress, and I think about the refund check, the apology letter, the new policies, the removal of Amy, the collapse of the tow vendor, the class action settlement, the clean slate. It was worth it. A year later, I am at another annual meeting. The room is full again. Ed is still the board president. There is a new enforcement coordinator. Her name is Linda. She is nothing like Amy. She is calm, fair, and professional. She gives a report on the past year. She says, we have had 0 improper tow complaints. We have had 0 harassment complaints. We have had 0 vendor issues. The new system is working. The room applauds. Someone raises a hand and asks about future audits. Ed says, we are committed to annual financial reviews and quarterly board meetings with open Q&A sessions. Transparency is our priority. I sit back and I feel satisfied. This is what I fought for. Not revenge, not drama, just accountability, just fairness, just a system that works the way it is supposed to. After the meeting, Linda walks over. She says, "I wanted to thank you. Your case forced the board to make changes that were long overdue. I inherited a much better job because of you." I say, "I am glad it worked out." She says, "If you ever have any issues, my door is open. No more surprises. No more games." I say, "I appreciate that." She walks away, and I leave. I drive home, and I park in my driveway. I walk inside, and I sit down at my desk. I have a new claim to review. A water heater replacement. It is straightforward. I finish the report in an hour. Then I close my laptop, and I go outside, and I sit on my porch. The neighborhood is quiet. The streetlights are on. The air is cool. Everything is calm. I think about the bright tow warning sticker. I think about Amy standing across the street with her clipboard and her smug smile. I think about her saying, "You will pay the fee, then you will pay the fee about the fee." I think about her staged photo and her false complaints and her kickback scheme. And I think about how it all came crashing down. Because I fought back. Because I documented everything. Because I hired an attorney. Because I demanded accountability. Because I refused to be intimidated. And now, a year later, the neighborhood is better. The HOA is better. The rules are better. And Amy is gone. I get up and I walk back inside. My phone buzzes. It is a text from Tom. He says, "Did you hear? Amy is trying to run for a board position in her new neighborhood." I text back. I say, "Good luck to them." He replies, "Should we warn them?" I think about it. Then I text back, "No. Let them figure it out. If she tries the same thing, someone will stop her. And if no one does, that is on them." He sends a laughing emoji. I put my phone down and I go to bed. I sleep well. No stress. No harassment. No drama. Just a quiet house and a quiet neighborhood with a functional HOA that follows its own rules. And that, honestly, is all I ever wanted. The next morning I wake up and I check my email. There is a message from the management company. It is a newsletter. It talks about upcoming events, new vendors, and policy updates. At the bottom there is a note. It says, "Thank you to all homeowners who participate in association governance. Your involvement makes our community stronger." I smile. I close the email. I get dressed and I go to work. I spend the day reviewing claims, talking to contractors, and reading policy documents. It is routine. It is boring. It is exactly what I need. That evening I drive home and I park in my driveway. No stickers, no boot clamps, no tow trucks. Just a normal driveway in a normal neighborhood. I walk inside and I make dinner. I eat on the couch and I watch a game. My phone stays quiet. No emails from the HOA. No calls from the management company. No drama. And I realize something. This is what winning looks like. Not fireworks. Not celebration. Just peace. Just normalcy. Just the ability to live your life without someone trying to squeeze you for money or push you around. That is all I fought for. And that is what I got. A few months later, I run into the woman from the barbecue. She is walking her dog past my house. She stops and she says, "How is everything going?" I say, "Quiet." Which is good. She says, "I heard Amy tried to start trouble in her new place. Apparently she filed a bunch of complaints in her first month. The board shut her down immediately. They checked her history and found out what happened here. She is basically blacklisted now." I say, "That is unfortunate." She says, "Is it?" I say, "I do not wish bad things on people. But I also do not feel sorry for her. She did it to herself." She nods. She says, "Fair enough." "Anyway, thanks again for everything you did. It really did make a difference." She walks away, and I go back inside. I sit down and I think about Amy. I think about her red baseball cap and her reflective safety vest and her clipboard. I think about her standing in the street, pointing at my house. I think about her screaming at me in the driveway while the boot clamp sat half-closed on my wheel. I think about her saying, "I am calling management, and I am going to be dramatic about it." And I think about the funny karma moment that happened during the payoff. The board meeting, where Karen tries to interrupt and the meeting votes anyway. She stood up and tried to object to the audit findings. She said the process was unfair. She said I had manipulated the evidence. She said the board was biased. And Ed just looked at her and said, "We are voting now. All in favor of accepting the audit and removing Miss Campbell from enforcement duties, say aye." Every hand went up. She tried to interrupt again, and Ed said, "The motion passes. You are out of order. Sit down." And she did. She sat down and she left the meeting 10 minutes later. That was the last time I saw her in the neighborhood. After that, the HOA sent a correction email retracting the smear. They sent it to every homeowner. It said, "We previously sent a notice regarding enforcement actions against a property on Clearbrook Lane. That notice was issued in error. The homeowner in question did not violate any association rules, and all penalties have been reversed. We apologize for the confusion." That email was better than any apology Amy could have given me. Because it was public. Because it cleared my name. Because it proved I was right. And then there was the moment when Karen's staged photos got used against her. When the board saw the metadata and realized she had taken new photos after being suspended. When they saw her trying to build a false case. When they voted to remove her entirely. That was the moment I knew it was over. Because she had used her own weapon against herself. She had tried to frame me and ended up framing herself. All of it came together because of a complaint to the management company that triggers discipline. Richard's demand letter forced them to act. They could not ignore it. They could not delay it. They had to respond. And when they did, the whole scheme unraveled. I lean back and I close my eyes. I think about the wheel lift arm inches from my tire. I think about the tow operator standing back and listening carefully. I think about the boot clamp and the warning sticker and the gate lockout and the harassment. I think about the fight and the stress and the legal fees and the meetings. And I think about the victory. The refund. The apology. The policy changes. The removal of Amy. The collapse of the predatory vendor. The class action settlement. The clean slate. It was worth every second. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you being here.